Welcome to Inside Marketing with Market Surge, your front row seat to the boldest ideas and smartest strategies in the marketing game. Your host is Reed Hansen, Chief Growth Officer at Market Surge.
Welcome to Inside Marketing with Market Surge. Today, I'm excited to welcome a guest who brings enterprise technology experience and practical insights into the world of business growth and innovation. Clay Sharman is the founder of Krateo.ai, an AI-powered platform designed to help businesses transform customer data and traffic data into actionable insights and personalized marketing strategies. With over 25 years of experience as a communication strategist, marketing executive, and solutions architect for large-scale technology implementations, Clay brings a rare blend of technical depth and narrative clarity. Krateo.ai reflects his passion for bridging innovation and communication, offering scalable solutions that empower businesses to engage smarter, automate faster, and connect more meaningfully. Clay's background spans both public and private sectors, including leadership roles in government, PR, and enterprise tech, making him a visionary at the crossroads of AI and human-centered marketing.
Oh.
Clay, welcome to the show.
Reed, that was an outstanding intro. I'll need you to send that to me. So thanks so much. Great to be here.
Well, my pleasure. You know, it's always fun to have people that are on the ground with emerging technologies like AI, but in addition to that, you have some very rubber meets the road application here with Krateo, and I think your background as a solutions architect really has helped you with that. I think so many of these platforms have lofty ideals or nebulous goals, but I love what you're doing here. Could you tell us maybe a little bit about what inspired you to start Krateo.ai and how did your background help direct you here?
Sure. Yeah. So as you mentioned, I spent a lot of years working with the federal government, and a good portion of that time was in the kind of looking to the future, the forefront of machine learning. At least AI probably was more of a concept and not really an application at the time, but I was doing a lot of work for the Department of Defense, the Navy, and the Air Force primarily, working on solutions around supply chain logistics and making sure that ordering and supplies were being delivered on a timely fashion around the world. So, automation was a key component of that. And then about 5 years ago, I got into enterprise intelligence and was able to work with a company that did some work supporting the three-letter agencies and national security. And we were looking at things like bad actors, inside threat detection. The idea being, let's take an alias down to an identity and then watch and track and see how their behavior was. And then again, at that point, we were trying to predict potential bad actors. It just so happens that commercially, the architecture for an alias to an identity is not all that different than an anonymous visitor down to an identity. And so there was an immediate kind of idea that popped in my head about commercial application for this to help brands do better in how they're relating to that anonymous audience that makes up the vast majority of their web browsing, kind of SEO efforts. So in my mind, you're spending a lot of money and your SEO may be effective, but if you're not able to converse with these people, get back to them and build a relationship with them, there's lost opportunity there. And we wanted to see if Krateo could help kind of bridge that gap and bring those two audiences closer.
And that's great. Could you tell us a little bit more about Krateo and how it works and what it delivers? I think it's a really interesting product that you have.
Thanks. Yeah. We wanted to approach it not just from a single-threaded kind of standpoint. So there's a critical component that I think we took on first, which is the ability to identify an anonymous visitor as they come onto a website. That's key, and there are competitors out there that do it alongside of us. And so that was kind of table stakes. We had to be able to do that in order to play. Where things get interesting is our ability to not just identify these visitors as they come in, but we're able to assess their behavioral kind of patterns as they move around the site. So not unlike the way Google Analytics will look and give you feedback on your overall audience, we can do the same thing at scale, but we do it at the individual level, so everybody gets scored. And then really the main thrust of what we're trying to do is get to the point where we can find out at an audience size. Who is the most likely to move forward in a buyer funnel and who's the least likely? And so our system is interesting because it works from two attack points, right? We're trying to exclude the low prospects and move the higher prospects so that brands immediately get a return on their investment with their ad spend. They're talking more to the right people, and rather than just sort of shotgunning this hopeful blast to a larger audience and then seeing what kind of comes to it. And then, we introduced the notion of AI and continuous learning because our intent is to get better on top of that. So, volume is important, yes, but it's really, we do want to find those needles in the haystack so that you're only talking to those targets. And that is very different than most of the platforms on the market now, this idea of exclusion as well as inclusion, because we're really trying to work the formula from both sides of the equation.
Well, and that's a great way to use technology to illustrate, marketing principle that I share with many of my clients is the marketing funnel, where you're qualifying candidates and making decisions about who you spend your time with or who you spend your ads dollars or salespeople's time with, because it's you can buy all the contact information in the world you want. You can do so many things in volume, but it all takes time. It all takes resources. And would you rather have 5 people that are looking to buy your product or 5,000 people that who knows,
Right.
that you have no idea? So. Now, I just want to ask you a question. I have an interesting situation with my own website. So marketsurge.io is our website, but we found, unfortunately, that there is a stock trading database called Market Surge that is owned by Investors Business Daily, and a significant amount of our traffic, I suspect,
Right.
is people typing in the wrong URL or being redirected in search incorrectly. Do you think Krateo has the ability to help us sort that potentially? Is that?
Yeah, so the way we would probably approach that problem, and it's not, there exists a Krateo.com as well. So interestingly, right?
Oh, right.
So
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
we own the URL, but there is another company called Krateo. So we have that same issue, same question. But yeah, I think the way I would approach it with you is we would simply watch the behavioral patterns, because typically, so if market surge for the investment side of things and the market side, the duration would probably be shorter, the number of pages that they scroll through and that sort of thing. And so we would probably just make some inferenced guesses early and then test those theories. You might do a nurture campaign or a newsletter invite on that to see if we're missing somebody. But we definitely see things like what the referring URL was that brought them to the site. So if they were coming from another site that was an investor, related thing, or market, kind of stock market related thing, we would see that, and we would then make that inference that this is probably the wrong type of candidate. So yeah, it would be probably a fairly simple filtering effect for us to sort that group as a different group, and probably teach the models pretty quickly to ignore them or deliver them to you if you wanted to talk to them. Because again, when they go to your website, it is data that you can use, and then they're probably within any audience size. There's probably somebody within that audience that is actually interested in both. And so, the question would be, to your point about resources and time, do you want to spend too much time with them, or wouldn't we rather just get you to those 5? And so that would be our goal, is to do the same thing. But we have the tools to assess that.
That's perfect. That would be a big benefit to us. We get like unusual spikes in traffic to like our terms and conditions and some of our compliance pages that are, I'm sure a financial advisor is very interested in that, but not so much a marketer. But anyway, that's very helpful. Now tell us how the AI functions in this with the scoring.
Yep.
So it sounds like, does it because I imagine this has to be an iterative approach. There has to be some sort of feedback back into your system to tell them that these were good leads, these were less less valuable?
Yeah, I would look at it as, in this instance, it's likely more of a retargeting strategy. And so
Okay.
everybody comes in and gets scored, ranked, stacked in the funnel. And I like your use of the term funnel, because what we would try to do is at the top fill, the lower likely, they're all warm because they went to your site. They're all brand aware because they went to your site. But then we would then move them further in terms of what we think they're likely to be, the people who click, likely to people who cart or sign up. So yeah, it's really on the return trip exactly that we use that. So iterative is the right process. We see them when they come back in, and we look at the things like, what was the tactic that brought them back in? What was the channel? So was it a social media display ad? Was it an email ad? Was it both? But those would all play into the updating of that score. And so our AI just uses a series of variables that are weighted in terms of value, and then we update that score, so it's sort of got a little bit of a mountaintop kind of line that you watch as it goes, but audiences will move in and out depending on how they retarget effectively or ineffectively. And then the goal would be, at that point, identifying what channels are behaving better, what channels are behaving worse, and then if there are tactics inside the channel. So all of that stuff plays in. So things that you could do as an analyst, it just would be incredibly time consuming to make those leaps at a speed with which you're trying to keep talking to these people within a cadence that's likely to catch them in a buying mood. So that's why AI works so well on the back end. And then on the front end, we use AI as an interaction for the user. So we have a co-pilot that I think I got a chance to show you,
Yeah.
where it will serve as your specialist. And so you can talk to it in natural language the way you would with any current AI tool that we know, ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude. And he's sort of bound to the service of that that user community. And so we try to, and I think we're successful in using AI on the back end to do all the intelligence in terms of scoring, moving, and identifying, and then of course the natural capability to just talk to your AI specialist as if you're talking to a team member. And that was our goal, was to create a platform that could work this anonymous audience in a way that was meaningful, but you, the user or the marketer, felt like, hey, Hermes is over here. What's Hermes doing for us? And it's just a team member interaction. So that's how that is the goal. And then of course, we're very up to date and pushing as many boundaries as we can with what's possible with AI on that front end.
That's awesome. Tell me a little bit about like what would be ideal users of your software. Like, I would assume that a higher volume of traffic would help a lot. But are there particular industries or use cases where they're maybe the use of ads is kind of could be a good way to filter. I don't know. Is it what do you
Yeah, so
say?
I think there's two fundamental user kind of populations within that question. The one is the higher volume. We get a lot of web traffic, and we realize we're not optimizing that web traffic as a means for revenue generation the way we'd like to be doing. So customer facing, product service oriented, high volume, 100%, regardless of the value of the customer at that point. And then you have the more kind of niche customer facing things, maybe in the financial services, investor wealth management, even the automotive industry, where the value of a single customer could be so high that it justifies, even with low traffic volume. Say you only get 2,000 web visitors a month, but if you were to understand and be able to connect with one of them and turn them into a client or a customer, that return would probably, in those low volumes, would give you a massive multiplier on the cost of the tool. And so the value there would be, if we could just get one, for the year, that would pay for the tool. But if imagine if we could get one a month. And so at that point, becomes very surgical in that sense. But the higher volume ones, that's fun because the models learn faster when you're talking about high volume. But what's nice is, one customer user or the other, the tool takes advantage of the aggregated knowledge that it's learning about audiences across all the industries, and it can apply it
Okay.
to very specific, niches.
Okay. That's fantastic. And every website's going to have a different. I mean, even within a given industry, so you've got the aggregate knowledge across all the users, but then it's learning
Right.
specific based on the individual website, which is fantastic. What? Tell me maybe some examples. I'd love to hear some examples of clients that are using your tool that like what kinds of impacts are
Yep.
they seeing? Some are tangible, some are probably intangible, but what do you have any anecdotes that we could digest?
Yeah, I actually got a few good ones.
Yeah.
So one of our early customer surprises that I like sharing is they're an energy drink manufacturer, healthy
Oh,
ketones, but they
okay.
direct product, customer facing. One of the things we do is we collect the commercial visitor as well as the consumer, so B2B and B2C. And so they weren't really interested in the B2B side of things, even though we were pulling a
Hmm.
little bit of information. But when we dug in to see who in that professional traffic was looking around, we kept seeing a particular national gym that their chief marketing officer was coming to the site a fair amount, enough to generate like, hey, you should probably reach out and see what they're thinking. If you're not thinking about it, they might have an idea. And anyway, cut the long story short, they wound up signing a national deal to put all of their products in the cafes in these gyms for everyone around
Wow.
the country. And so it wound up being their biggest partnership. And it was just an outgrowth of the data that we were collecting. So, we had warned them in a very positive way. You can't answer a question if you don't know what to ask, and you can't ask a question without the data. And so, just by us presenting the data, it began a conversation. So, that was a great surprise for us, too.
Yeah.
Like, that became a very good use case for us to talk through. Don't dismiss an opportunity because you have a perceived notion of who your audience is or who you're talking to. And then the other thing is the understanding the difference between the ICP, that ideal customer profile, and then the ideal web surfing profile typically looks
Mhm.
vastly different. And so it's very important from a website standpoint. So you brought it up. It's important to see what are people digesting from the site, what's working, what's not working. So those are questions we're not really built to hone in on right now, but over
Mhm.
time that's information that we can make kind of predictions on based on traffic, what pages are being avoided, what pages are people lingering on, scrolling down. And so there are some secondary things that you could start to look at and say, we put this landing page up, nobody seems to be going to it. That's not what our goal is, but that's a
Mhm.
capability that we have in the data that we collect to say, yeah, we don't know why, but this is something we should probably pay attention to. And if you look at the demographics, you may discover this landing page is speaking to the wrong age group or the wrong gender or
Mhm.
whatever, but you could then answer it. And then, of course, the most obvious ones are suddenly being able to speak to this much higher top funnel of marketing prospects that went to your site. And so you don't have to introduce yourselves to them. So that was a key one, right? Is this idea of you're really just reintroducing them and giving them an opportunity to come back in and learn a little bit more. That's different than me reaching out and saying, "Hi, Reed, my name's Clay. I'd like to tell you about what I do." It's different than if I know you'd come by over the weekend and I just didn't get a chance to talk to you. Now it's a completely different conversation, and that's really what our customers are discovering is the ability to segment and sort how they talk to smaller audiences within their funnel. It's driving up click rates. It's driving up all of the things that you'd like to see from an engagement standpoint. And then ideally it's setting everybody up for becoming a customer faster, building this trust. So some really cool ways to use it. And then over time, what I'm really excited about is when, and we're not there yet, because we started onboarding people last year, so we're only now just getting into that 12-month kind of return trip on what 12 months looks like and beyond. But I think the most exciting things are when we have kind of garnered the trust of our customers from the standpoint of predicting what's likely to happen going forward in the next 12 months. And that's really going to be cool because then at that point we really are the team member and kind of a specialist in an area that up till now you sort of had to write off as a lost marketing opportunity. Yeah, that's the cost of doing business. You drive a lot of people in hopes to get a few out of it. And now we can sort of change that equation, and suddenly you're looking at opportunities differently. That's all. So, yeah, those use cases are exciting, and it should be endless because you can be as creative as you want with the data that you're looking at, and it can be unique and it can be very surgical in how you're using it for you versus how it worked for like a service company, a product company might use it totally differently, and that's what's cool about it. If you have the data, you can ask the question.
Yeah. Well, I love what you're describing. It's like driving the user experience design process forward because, you know, uh, I've worked with user experience designers. I'm not one myself, but I understand a lot of their process is
Right.
observational and observing how people interact with uh, your physical products, your website in a captive environment, but the anonymous traffic has always been a question mark. It's you've been able to get like wide swaths from
Right.
Google Analytics, like age ranges, gender
Right.
ish, like measures, but to get down to individuals and it changes a lot because like you said, it might change the kind of customer you decide to target. It might change the kinds of products you promote or
Absolutely.
the ad spend. And I mean, the principle is the same as it's always been for designing your user experience, but with this richer information, you can actually do it.
Yeah, I would say that, the way I look at it is I try to invert the model, right? It's sort of
Uh-huh.
statistically a 2% success rate. 98% come in and take no action and leave, 2% stick
Mhm.
around, give you what you want, and hopefully become customers. And you build your entire strategy around that 2%. And we're like, man, what if we could knock that open to 3%, or 4%. I mean, it's a massive impact across the bottom line. And yet, from my perspective, it's just a 2% bump in data that I can now look across that we could be examining at AI speed. And so the concept should be there's no reason we can't get there and help the market understand at a broader level to do what you just said, which is hey, what products do we want to introduce next year that because of the way people are engaging with the site, maybe there are things we didn't think about that we should be. And so that would be my ultimate goal in the boardroom is, you know, conversations that go just beyond marketing and sales, but the overall kind of future outlook of the company, maybe the way that the
Mhm.
web branding is kind of going forward and all of those things where that kind of data can influence each one of those areas and have a broader business impact. That would be awesome, and it's possible. That's what's cool.
So let me zoom out a little bit. And now, as a business owner and your own marketing efforts, as you're promoting Crateo, can you tell me what channels you like to, you found success with in promoting your own business? And, maybe, I mean, I'm sure you've used eating your own dog food, so to
Definitely.
speak, and using your own tool. Like, what have been some learnings you've had along the way in promoting Crateo?
Yeah, great question. So, coming out of the gate, it was a lot of sort of our own investor community referral group that was kind of passing us around and getting us out there, and then doing things like writing articles about what's happening and trying to get them into the technology kind of eyesight so that people had eyes on it and understood what we're doing, and talking to people like you who have great questions from a marketing standpoint about how could we be doing better. We started doing, we worked with direct sales outreach efforts. We're currently doing a lot of work on LinkedIn, which is yielding
Cool.
some good, really good results actually from booking meetings. Which from my perspective, it was simply we knew we had a problem that's gigantic. It's $1 trillion industry that we're trying to tackle, and we wanted to take the right bite sizes, but I also wanted to make sure that we weren't missing too many opportunities. So LinkedIn's a great space. We have good metrics around converting a demo to a customer. We just weren't getting enough demos, and so it just became a volume game for us. So we use companies that use AI to identify the best targeting pools. Areas like financial services has been good for us. Obviously, retail. One of the challenges with retail, and I'm not giving anything away, is retail companies typically they have a jaded kind of view on the technology stack and what AI means in that technology stack. Oh yeah, I mean I've seen 10 demos of companies just like you. And then I always say, I bet you haven't. And then when I show them, there is a leaning in and there is well, I didn't know you could do all that. So, you know, separation in a large competitive space like retail is tricky. There's a lot of noise and it's hard. I can't shout as well in that space as I could in other spaces. But retail is a clear target for us, so we don't want to miss out. So, we're doing just LinkedIn, social media, kind of direct dial outreach using AI technologies to try to find industries where people should be interested and probably are. So I don't think we're doing anything that's different than every other company's trying to do, which is just maximize the potency of what we're doing. But of course, we do use Krateo to identify our own visitors, and that works out as well as or better than every other thing for the same reason, right? I know they've gone to the site. They typically have some questions. Anytime you can get them to say, well, I went to your site, it looks pretty interesting, you're going to have at least a demonstration to show them why it's interesting. So that's been great. It's just like, we're still trying to build our own SEO volume at a level that would give us, man, if I could build the pipeline from my own SEO stuff, but we're not getting that kind of stuff. We're busy trying to get our name out so that other people hear about us. So it's a little bit of I'd say marketing is one of the areas where I'm trying to get smarter faster now at the same time to take advantage of what's out there and available.
Yeah. Well, and everything does feel it's like a combination of some marketing approaches are tired, and but then some things are very new because you've got a new product, a new
Right.
concept. You don't really have much to compare it to. I mean, there some at a high level, but you're within that. You're delivering so much more, and so if you take the route of we're like Google Analytics or Meta tags, and then people look away. But if you don't use that context, it's hard to explain on a first touch.
Yeah, actually, that's a great point. It really is hard to figure out what that sweet spot is when you're trying to describe, because the question invariably does pop up, well, who are you like? And if your answer
Right.
is, we're not really like anybody quite, then it's kind of like, well, I don't know what that means. Is that going to be useful to me? And so you have to, you have to walk that line and make sure that there's a familiarity that says, oh, okay, you're like those guys, only smaller, more nimble, whatever. And, you know, typically when we talk about the individual, the anonymous individual, and what we're capable of doing to find 10 or 50 or 100 or 1,000 more of that person who's, supremely interested based on how they interacted, that's a very key differentiator across any other platform that I'm compared against. Once we talk about personalizing the scoring and audience building based on personalization, most people kind of have to bow out of the race at that point. I've taken a good
Mm,
lead. So, if I'm running that 4 by 100, that they usually don't have that fourth leg runner. And so I'm
yeah. Yeah.
typically bringing it in, even if they can keep up with me for 3 legs. And so that was intentional. We wanted to make sure we had a full, completed journey where we could then take what we learned on the first journey and predict what the second journey return might look like. And that's also very different in terms of what's available today. And whether I think that's going to stay the case or not is to be determined. But right now, that is the long and short of it. We can do things that other platforms don't.
Yeah. Well, you have a great product, like as somebody that's trying to generate more leads for clients, this is like gold. This is really really valuable info. And you know, yeah, so I'd encourage everybody to reach out. One last question before we wrap up, and I'm going to ask you to put on your predictor hat and say,
Ready?
exactly. Now, AI has been changing so much. We were talking about this before the call. The It seems like the rate of acceleration is it's hard to understand how much is new about AI. Every day,
Right.
every update we get. What do you see as the future? In this year and coming years of AI and AI for marketing. Um, do you have any thoughts on what we can anticipate coming up soon?
Yeah, actually, that's a timely question for two reasons. One, it's one that we're keenly interested in, but two, I got the opportunity to sit and moderate a panel down in New Orleans in April for the American Marketing Association, and it was their intercollegiate college graduate program. So there was about
Oh, cool.
2,500 emerging graduates who were interested in marketing, and that question came up amongst the panel. And you could imagine some of the answers were optimistic and some were a little bit, kind of scary. So the one thing that I do think is likely to happen is there are going to be a reduction in marketing team sizes because AI can do things and mimic credibly, and in some cases, better because they have a broader base to kind of research into. And so copywriting is a tough one. So I wouldn't want to pick and choose, but I do think marketing teams are going to get smaller and more nimble. I think, what's awesome about it is there's still going to be the opportunity for creativity, but it's going to force marketers to think a little bit differently. And then again, how do I sound a little different in a sea of sameness? Because AI is going to allow just about everybody to level the playing field. Then it falls to the human to outthink, which I think is going to be an awesome challenge, right? And so that was something I was very up, kind of the upside. That was very exciting. I think the downside is also the upside, right? Our giant AI technology companies that are pushing the forefront, they're not really releasing the roadmap. So you and I can't see the horizon until it's actually on us. And
Right.
so, if I was just guessing, and I think I'll probably be right a good portion of this one anyway, is the term generative AI, it sort of stormed out of the gate in like 2022, and it became this great tool that became adopted. And then suddenly in 2024, you'd start to hear this term agentic AI. And
Mm.
so, at the simplest level, you have this capability to generate an answer. And one of the problems with it was, of course, it didn't know enough not to sometimes hallucinate, which is a term where it made up the ending of the story or filled in parts. But it could generate things at speed and at a competence that was, eye popping. And now you move to this agentic world where it doesn't just generate the answers, it actually sets the table to take the action for you. And so, I think that's going to be awesome because I think workflow automation is going to change in the near future, where workflow automation is going to finally have a permission statement at the end where companies will have the option to flip that toggle that says yes authorized, and then an AI platform or AI technology is going to be able to actually close the circuit itself on an action that it's basically said, would you like me to, on an ongoing basis, continue to do this for you? And then if you toggle it to yes, it's a set it and forget it type of methodology, which is really different. And then I think, the next obvious leap from there will be once we have a trust in the AI's ability to take that action and deliver results, pretty soon it's going to become a real recommendation platform that's going to be the one that suggests the movement at some point. And then that I think is where we're going to come, kind of have that next conversation of, is this a good thing or a bad thing? And I think the answer is going to be yes, right? It's going to be both, and it'll just to be
Okay.
depend. So, but I do think it's an inevitability that the AI is going to become the recommendation agent before, before long, and maybe faster than I'm even imagining. I'm thinking I've got 16 months, and maybe AI is laughing at me saying, I'll see you in 6, you know? So I just don't know.
Well, I mean, I think it's good to go in with eyes
Right.
open. I tell all my clients, you have to be acquainted with AI. If you don't see the use case yet, that's fine. As the agents get stronger, there will definitely be more and more use cases for more and more businesses. But you don't want to be on the tail end of it where you hadn't decided not to build a website or decided not to install phones or any of this where you just got disrupted and you had plenty of warning.
Yeah.
So
Actually, that reminded me of one more thing that I should have mentioned
yeah,
because of the way you said it. Um, I think it's important that we, as the marketers or the users, understand why the platform gave us the answer it gave us. You can't take it for granted that it's the right answer because it was generated by AI. So I think, there it's going to be kind of incumbent on us to keep challenging the why of the question. But I totally agree with you, Reed. You have to not be afraid of it. You need to understand what use case applications are available to you, and you need to sort of dive in and say, AI is here. I like your use of the term tail end. I don't want to be the person riding in the back who's kind of watching everybody else in front of me. So I think if you can adopt a mindset of this should be a great tool, right? It's a tool still, no matter what. It shouldn't be the answer, but it could feed, and inform why your answers are getting better, right? As long as I think you challenge it. So that's my optimism right there at the tail end is we shouldn't
yeah.
fear it, but we should challenge it.
Yeah, and I too lean towards the optimistic side, but of course, it's we just have to be aware and consider all the implications.
Right.
Well, Clay, can you tell us just in closing? You have a great product. I think you've got some tremendous expertise in this field. Where can listeners find you if they'd like more information from you or from Crateo? What are the best places to find you?
Well, so obviously you can go to our website, which is simply Krateo.ai. You can find us on LinkedIn, and we do a weekly, bi-weekly newsletter. I'm still working on which one it is, but we produce the newsletter fairly regularly, and there's a lot of, most of the emphasis on those newsletters is the use of AI, not just as a answer, but the things that you should be leveraging as a use case and how to talk to people. So that's a great place. So LinkedIn, you can find us again, Krateo.ai there. We are on Facebook, and so we're trying to find it. But the website and LinkedIn are the best ways to reach us, and you can get some great information off of the LinkedIn page on, for Crateo. So, and feel free, I hope everybody will sign up for that newsletter because I enjoy writing it, and it's a great way. It's not technical, so it's easy to digest, and so it's been a lot of fun. But yeah, I appreciate this, Reed.
Perfect.
This was great.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Clay. And I learned a lot, and I think this will be really beneficial to our audience. We've got a lot of business owners, a lot of non-technical marketers, and just the more information we have, and especially from somebody that's really immersed in it like you are, is great.
Yeah, I
So
appreciate the opportunity. And for the non-technical people out there, it's think of it in terms of how you'd like to see the information on your customer improved, and then that sort of softens the idea because artificial intelligence can help with that, and that's the good news. And we really are excited about what's possible. And I do want to end on this very positive, upbeat data privacy note where we do only collect information from the website traffic, which means it's all first-party data. We don't use third-party sources, and so our whole goal is the ethical use of data in the service of building a trusted relationship by the brand to the consumer. Because at the end of the day, you and I are consumers, and it would be great if we trusted the brands that had access to us, so we weren't always scratching our head as to how information got out. We were just more impressed with how it's being used to kind of provide us with the most relevant material or the most relevant products and services. And so that's really our goal is to help reduce spam across all advertising channels and make things more impactful. So enough of my
Well,
public
that's
service
great.
announcement there.
No, no, I think that's important, and an important piece of the trust puzzle that everybody wants to consider. So thanks again, Clay,
Pleasure.
and look forward to continuing conversation in the future and following your progress.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Reed. This is great.
Want to stay ahead of what's actually working in marketing right now? Head over to marketsurge.io and see how we're helping businesses grow smarter, faster, and louder. That's marketsurge.io, because your next breakthrough shouldn't be a guess.